Megan stood in the eerie silence of the forest, her breath shallow and rapid, her mind reeling. The wail of Eliza's ghost had faded, but the lingering presence of the spirit seemed to hang in the air, thick and suffocating. The wind had died down, but the atmosphere felt charged with an ominous energy, as if the very trees were holding their breath, waiting for the next move. David stood beside her, his eyes scanning the now empty clearing. "We have to act fast," he said, his voice low but urgent. "Eliza's spirit may have faded for now, but the curse isn't over. We've only scratched the surface." Megan nodded, still processing the gravity of what had just happened. The encounter with Eliza had been more than just a ghostly wail. It had been a warning. The town's darkest secrets had been brought to light, but Eliza's wrath hadn't been satisfied. It wasn't just about the town's history. It was about the people who had kept that history buried. People who still lived in Redwood Grove. People who had become complicit in the cover-up. "We need to find the burial site," Megan said, her voice firm with determination. "We need to know exactly where Thomas is buried. That's the key to breaking this curse." David hesitated. The burial site is deep within the forest. It's hidden even from most of the town, but it's not going to be easy to get there. The town's leaders, they've protected that place for years, and they'll do anything to keep it from being found. Megan looked at him, her resolve strengthening. "Then we'll have to face them. We can't let the town live in this lie any longer. Eliza deserves justice. Thomas deserves justice. And the people here need to know the truth." The two of them moved through the forest together, the path ahead becoming more difficult to navigate as the trees grew thicker, their branches stretching out like dark arms. The further they went, the more oppressive the air became. And Megan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't just the silence of the woods. It was the weight of Eliza's curse, watching them, waiting. After what seemed like hours, they came upon a small, hidden clearing. In the center stood an old stone monument, covered in moss and behind, weathered by time but still standing firm. Megan's heart skipped a beat as she approached the stone. She had heard of this place, the forgotten grave of Thomas Hawthorne. David stopped a few steps behind her. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is where it all began." Megan ran her fingers over the moss-covered stone, tracing the faint inscriptions that had long been eroded by time. She could barely make out the name Thomas Hawthorne engraved in the stone. But it wasn't the name that caught her attention. It was the symbols surrounding it. Ancient markings, much like those she had seen on the stone in the cemetery. She hadn't realized it before, but now it was clear. The curse wasn't just about grief. It was about a hidden pact, one made long ago to protect the town and its founders at any cost. "They buried him here," Megan said, her voice filled with realization. "But they didn't just bury his body. They buried the truth. They made sure no one could ever find out what really happened." David stepped forward, kneeling beside the stone. They wanted to protect the town's reputation. They didn't care about the cost. Thomas was too dangerous, too close to exposing the town's corruption. Megan's mind raced as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. She knew what she had to do now. "We need to bring this to light," she said, determination filling her voice. "We need to show the town what they've been hiding. Eliza won't be free until the truth is out. David looked at her, his expression somber but resolute. The town won't give up its secrets easily, Megan. They'll fight to keep this buried. And Eliza's spirit won't rest until it's all exposed. Megan nodded. She understood the danger. But she had come too far to turn back now. The truth was waiting to be uncovered, and she wouldn't let fear stand in her way. We'll face them together. We'll make sure the truth comes out. Just as she finished speaking, the ground beneath them trembled, the trees around them groaning as if they were alive. Megan froze, her heart racing. She knew what was happening. Eliza's wrath had not been fully quelled. The curse was still alive. A figure appeared before them. A dark, shadowy form, barely visible but unmistakably present. It was Eliza's ghost. Her face twisted in rage, her eyes burning with fury. The air around her crackled with energy, the earth beneath them shifting as if the forest itself was being pulled into her vengeful grip. "You cannot escape the past," Eliza's voice echoed through the clearing, louder now, more powerful than before. "You will pay for disturbing what was meant to stay buried. You will face the consequences." Megan stepped forward, her heart pounding, but her voice unwavering. "Eliza, I understand your pain. But we can't keep living in the past. The town has to face the truth. Your husband's death, the cover-up. It's the only way to end this." Eliza's form flickered, her eyes narrowing with anger. "You think you can change history? You think you can free me from my torment?" She let out a low, guttural laugh. "You're too late, Megan. The curse will never end." With that, the ground beneath them split open, sending a shockwave of energy through the air. Megan and David were thrown to the ground, struggling to keep their footing as the forest seemed to come alive with the force of Eliza's rage. But even in the chaos, Megan refused to give up. She grabbed the journal, the one that held the key to Eliza's story, and raised it high. "We'll finish this. We'll make sure you're at peace." And as the forest howled around them, Megan knew that the final confrontation with Eliza's restless spirit had begun, and that nothing could stop her from uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. The earth beneath Megan and David's feet quaked as Eliza's fury filled the air, swirling around them in a powerful storm of energy. The trees seemed to shake in unison, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands trying to grab hold of the past. Megan's heart raced as the ghostly wail of Eliza echoed through the forest, a sorrow so deep and raw that it sent a shiver down her spine. But in the chaos of the moment, Megan felt something stir within her, an overwhelming sense of determination. She had come too far to turn back. The secrets of Redwood Grove, the mysteries buried in the town's dark history, could no longer be ignored. She had to face the truth, no matter the cost. "Eliza!" Megan shouted, her voice barely audible over the shrill cries of the spirit. "I understand your pain, but I can't let you keep the town in the dark. You deserve justice, and your husband's death needs to be known. We can't move forward without the truth." The ghostly figure of Eliza flickered in front of them, her face twisted in anguish. Her hollow eyes locked onto Megan, filled with centuries of rage. "You think you can change it all? You think you can undo what's been done?" Eliza's voice was a harsh whisper, each word filled with unbridled emotion. "I have waited too long for the truth. And now you've disturbed it all. You'll never leave here. The ground trembled beneath them, and the forest seemed to come alive, the trees shifting and bending as if responding to Eliza's anger. The air grew colder, and the shadows around them deepened. Megan stepped back, her heart racing, but her resolve remained strong. She couldn't let Eliza's wrath consume them all. "We're not trying to erase your pain," Megan said, her voice steady despite the fear threatening to rise within her. "But we can't move forward if the truth remains buried. We're not just doing this for you, Eliza. We're doing it for everyone in this town who has lived in fear, in silence." David stood beside her, his expression grim, but he didn't falter. "The town's past won't be erased, but it can be faced. You don't have to carry this burden anymore. Your husband's death won't be forgotten. We'll make sure of that." Eliza's form flickered again, and for a moment, Megan thought she saw something resembling sorrow in the ghost's eyes. But just as quickly, the spirit's fury returned, and the ground shook violently, as if protesting Megan and David's words. Eliza let out a piercing scream, and the trees around them began to bend and twist in unnatural ways. "I will not rest until they all pay," Eliza's voice roared, reverberating through the forest. "They took everything from me, and they will pay." Megan felt the pressure of Eliza's anger pushing against her, but she stood firm. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about setting things right. It was about giving Eliza the peace she had long been denied. "You don't have to keep punishing the town," Megan said, her voice calm yet filled with an unshakable determination. "You don't have to drag them all into this endless cycle of revenge. We can give you what you deserve, the truth, justice for your husband, peace for your soul." For a long moment, there was only silence, a stillness so thick that it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Megan and David stood together, facing Eliza's wrath as the ghost's presence loomed before them. Then, slowly, Eliza's form began to dissipate, her wails fading into the night. The trees stopped swaying, and the ground stopped trembling. The air around them seemed to grow still, as if the forest itself had exhaled a long-held breath. "I will never forget," Eliza's voice whispered, now barely audible as her presence seemed to vanish entirely. "But perhaps I can rest now." "Thank you." Megan felt the weight of Eliza's words, and she let out a slow, relieved breath. The curse that had haunted Redwood Grove for so long seemed to have lifted, its oppressive grip loosening. The forest, once alive with anger, was now silent and peaceful. But even as the tension lifted, Megan knew their work wasn't done. The truth had been set free, but now the town would have to face the consequences. It would take time for the residents of Redwood Grove to accept the painful history they had long buried, and some might resist, still clinging to the lies they had built their lives on. But Megan couldn't worry about that now. "Let's go," Megan said to David, her voice filled with both relief and a sense of purpose. "It's time to bring this to the people. They need to know the truth, and we need to make sure Eliza's sacrifice wasn't in vain." David nodded, his face weary but resolute. "It's not over, but we've taken the first step. The truth will set this town free." As they made their way back through the forest, the once oppressive silence now felt like a quiet peace. The curse of Redwood Grove had been lifted, and though the scars of the past would take time to heal, Megan knew that the town had finally faced its darkest secrets. And perhaps, just perhaps, Eliza's spirit would finally find the rest she had long been denied. The town of Redwood Grove had been shaken to its core. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. Megan and David made their way back through the streets, the weight of what they had uncovered heavy in their hearts. The forest had yielded its secrets, and now the town itself would have to face what had been buried for so long. But there was no guarantee that the townspeople would accept the truth. Some would deny it, some would resent it, and others might even try to silence it once more. Megan knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The people of Redwood Grove had lived in the shadow of Eliza's curse for generations, and now that curse had been lifted, though at great cost. The town had been complicit in covering up the truth, hiding a murder and allowing a grieving woman to become a legend, a ghost of their own making. But now that the truth had been exposed, it was up to the townspeople to reckon with their past. As Megan and David entered the town hall, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The room was filled with familiar faces, residents of the town, old and young, some with fearful expressions, others with anger in their eyes. At the front of the room stood the mayor, a man who had been in power for decades, his face a mask of concern and confusion. Behind him, several other town officials stood, their expressions tight, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation they knew was coming. Megan stepped forward, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. "It's time to face the truth," she said, her voice steady but firm. "Eliza Hawthorne didn't die from grief. She was murdered, and the town hid the truth to protect itself. But now, the curse has been broken, and it's time for the town to reckon with what it has done." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Megan could see the looks of disbelief and fear on the faces of the townspeople. Some of them tried to look away, but the truth had been spoken, and there was no denying it anymore. The past had come crashing into their present, and they had nowhere to hide. The mayor cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "Megan, I understand that this is a difficult thing to hear, but—" "No," Megan interrupted, her voice rising with emotion. "You don't understand. The town has been living a lie. You've all lived in the shadow of Eliza's grief, and it's time to admit the truth. The town is built on corruption, on buried secrets, and it's time for those secrets to come to light. You can't keep hiding from the past." David stepped forward, his voice quiet but filled with authority. "We're not here to destroy this town. We're here to help it heal. The town can't move forward if it keeps ignoring the truth. We can't change the past, but we can ensure that it's not forgotten." The mayor looked around the room, his gaze flicking to the other town officials. Megan could see the tension in his face, the internal struggle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "You're right," the mayor said, his voice heavy with resignation. "We can't undo what's been done. But we can't keep hiding it either. The truth is out, and we need to face it. Together." Megan felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was quickly followed by a deep sadness. She had known this day would come, but the reality of it was still overwhelming. The town would have to confront its darkest history, and it wouldn't be easy. But it was a necessary step toward healing, both for Eliza's spirit and for the town itself. The mayor turned to the crowd, I know this town has been through a lot, and I know that some of you are scared. But we need to stand together. We can't keep hiding from the truth. We need to make things right. There were murmurs in the crowd, some skeptical, others resigned. But as the mayor spoke, Megan could see the shift. The people were beginning to understand. The truth was undeniable, and it had already begun to change them. We'll begin by acknowledging the past, the mayor continued, and we'll work together to rebuild trust within our community and with ourselves. The curse has been broken, but the work is far from over. We owe it to Eliza, to Thomas, and to all of us to move forward with honesty and integrity. Megan nodded, a sense of hope rising within her. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. The road ahead would be difficult. But at least now the town was no longer running from its past. They had faced the truth, and they would rebuild, piece by piece. As the meeting drew to a close, Megan felt a quiet sense of closure. Eliza's spirit had been set free, and the town had taken its first step toward healing. There was still much work to be done, but the truth had been brought to light, and with it came the possibility of redemption. Megan turned to David as they left the hall, a tired smile on her face. "We did it," she said quietly. David nodded, his eyes filled with a quiet pride. "We did," he agreed. "But this is just the beginning." As they walked out into the cool night air, the sounds of the town seemed different now. Less burdened, less haunted. The past would always be there, but it no longer held the town in its grip. For the first time in years, Redwood Grove was free. Megan walked through the streets of Redwood Grove with a sense of quiet accomplishment, but the weight of what had transpired still lingered in the air. The truth had come to light, and while the town had begun to heal, she couldn't help but feel that the journey was far from over. Eliza's spirit had been freed, and the curse had been lifted. But there was a lingering presence in the town, a presence that seemed to echo through the very streets they walked. The town was quieter now, more subdued. People spoke openly about what had happened, about the secrets that had been buried, and the injustices they had lived with for so long. Some felt relief, while others still struggled to accept the weight of the truth. But one thing was clear. Redwood Grove was no longer the same place it had been before Megan's arrival. And for the first time in a long while, Megan felt like she was part of something bigger, something that wasn't defined by fear or silence. But as she walked past the familiar landmarks of the town, she noticed a change. There was a shift in the atmosphere. The streets were emptier than usual, the houses quieter. It was as though something had been set in motion, something that neither Megan nor the townspeople could quite understand yet. David caught up with her, his footsteps light against the quiet backdrop of the town. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Megan paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. "Yeah, I'm just thinking. It feels like the calm before something else, you know? Like the past is still watching us." David nodded, his gaze scanning the horizon. "It's the echoes of the past. We've dealt with the worst of it, but there's always a lingering reminder of what's been left behind. It's going to take time for the town to fully heal, for everyone to come to terms with the truth." Megan looked at him, a quiet understanding passing between them. "But the first step has been taken. The town is talking about what happened, That's progress. David smiled, though there was a trace of concern in his eyes. Progress, yes, but it's not over yet. Eliza's spirit is free, but the curse wasn't just about her. It was about the lies, the secrets that have held this place together for far too long. Those who still resist the truth will need time to accept it. Megan's mind wandered back to the days she had spent researching the town, speaking with the townspeople and uncovering the dark history hidden beneath Redwood Grove's idyllic exterior. She thought of the people she had met, the ones who had believed in the town's myths, who had dismissed the stories as nothing more than superstition. Now, those same people had to reckon with the consequences of their denial, their refusal to face what had really happened all those years ago. "We've done our part," Megan said quietly, "but I don't know if the rest of the town is ready to face everything yet." David's expression softened. "No one ever is. But we can't hide from the truth forever, and we've given them a chance to face it. What they choose to do with it is up to them." As they continued walking, Megan could feel the weight of the town's history behind her, pressing down like a heavy fog. The darkness wasn't gone. It had simply shifted, its grip loosened, but not fully released. The curse of Redwood Grove had been broken, but its scars were still visible, hidden beneath the surface. The past had not been erased, but it had been acknowledged, and that, in itself, was a victory. But as they neared the edge of town, Megan stopped in her tracks. In the distance, she saw something, or someone, moving through the trees at the edge of the forest. Her heart skipped a beat. It was a figure, standing still, watching. Her breath caught in her throat as her mind raced. Could it be Eliza's spirit? Still lingering in the woods? Still tied to the place she had called home? "Megan?" David asked, noticing her sudden stillness. "What is it?" She didn't answer immediately, her eyes still fixed on the figure in the distance. As she looked closer, the figure seemed to fade into the shadows of the trees, vanishing just as quickly as it had appeared. Megan shook her head, unsure of what she had seen. Maybe it had been a trick of the light, or maybe, just maybe, the echoes of the past were still present, still lingering in the corners of the town, waiting to be remembered. "I think it's over," Megan said finally, her voice soft but sure. "But there's always more to uncover, more to understand. The past never truly leaves us." David smiled, his expression both weary and knowing. "No, it doesn't, but the important thing is, we've started the conversation. We've brought the truth to the surface, and that's enough." As they stood there, looking out over the town and the forest beyond, Megan knew that the journey was far from complete. The story of Redwood Grove would continue to unfold, but it would never be the same again. The town had faced its darkest secret, and though the ghosts of the past might still linger, they had no power over the future. For the first time in a long while, Megan felt a sense of peace, knowing that no matter what happened next, the truth had been set free, and that was the only thing that truly mattered. The morning sun broke through the thick mist, casting a soft glow over Redwood Grove. The town, once heavy with the weight of its secrets, seemed to breathe more easily now. Megan stood at the edge of the forest, looking out over the town. The fog was lifting, and the air felt lighter, as if the land itself had been freed from the burden of centuries-old lies. Megan had spent days in Redwood Grove, uncovering the past, facing the consequences of truth, and helping the town confront its darkest history. It hadn't been easy, and it certainly hadn't been without sacrifice. But now, standing here, she felt the weight of the journey begin to lift. The curse that had hung over the town was no longer its defining story. The truth had been brought into the light, and with it, a chance for redemption. David stood beside her, his eyes on the horizon. "It's hard to believe it's all over," he said quietly, his voice filled with both relief and a touch of exhaustion. "The past is still there, but it doesn't have the same grip on this town anymore." Megan nodded, her gaze sweeping over the town that had once been filled with tension and fear. "It won't be easy for everyone to accept what's happened. There are still wounds to heal, and the truth has a way of rattling people. But we've done what we can. The rest is up to them." David looked at her, his expression softening. "You did more than uncover the truth, Megan. You gave this town a chance to rebuild. You gave them the choice to move forward." Megan smiled, though the weight of everything still lingered in her heart. "I just helped them face it. They're the ones who have to carry it now." As they stood there in silence, Megan thought about Eliza, the woman whose grief had turned into a curse, whose desperate search for her husband had torn the town apart. Eliza's spirit had been freed, and with that, the town had a chance to heal. But even though Eliza had found peace, Megan knew that the echoes of the past would always be a part of Redwood Grove. Some scars never fully heal, and some stories never truly fade. Still, there was hope now. Hope that the town would choose to live in the light of truth, no longer defined by fear or lies. Megan had brought the past into the open, but it was the people of Redwood Grove who would have to decide what to do with it. She turned to David, who had been watching her closely. "What happens now?" David smiled faintly. "Now we leave the rest up to them. They'll have their challenges, but they have a chance to change. And sometimes, that's all we can ask for." Megan nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. She had come to Redwood Grove seeking a story, but what she had found was something far more profound. She had found the power of truth, the kind of truth that could heal, even if it meant confronting the darkest parts of the past. She had helped set Eliza's spirit free, but in doing so, she had also helped the town free itself. The wind shifted, and Megan could feel the first true breath of spring. The town of Redwood Grove, long haunted by its own secrets, was starting to emerge from the shadows. And for the first time in a long while, Megan felt as if she could leave, knowing that the town had a chance to begin again. The past was no longer a weight they had to carry in silence. As she walked toward the bus station to leave Redwood Grove behind, Megan paused and looked back one last time. The town, bathed in the golden light of morning, seemed to be waking up from a long, troubled sleep. She knew it would take time, but she had hope for them. They had faced their darkest secrets, and now they could choose their future. For Megan, the journey was over. But for Redwood Grove, it was just the beginning. And as she boarded the bus and looked out the window, she couldn't help but smile. The town had found its peace, and she had found something too. The truth had set them all free,